So tonight's Coloring Night will feature UAB's Associate Professor, newly tenured Professor of New Media, Elisabeth Pellathy. But in 2 weeks' time, we will have our other newly tenured Professor, Associate Professor of Sculpture, Stacey Holloway, who's also on this call. And we have an exciting lineup of programming coming this fall in addition to the opening of our fall exhibition a la carte. So we will stop having these twice a month, but we will have these once a month throughout the fall, and it is the first Thursday of each month, and we will alternate that with other programming every other Thursday. So be sure to keep an eye out on our webpage and social media for those. And if you're interested in taking art classes but are from pre-K up through 12, be sure to check out Art Play Community Art Education, where we offer classes and in not just visual arts, but also performing arts as well. So before we go ahead and get started, let's go ahead and switch to grid view. Thank you, Amanda. And if we can all hold up what we're going to be working on so we can see what everyone is going to be doing throughout tonight. Okay. Yay! Awesome. A lot of us picked a similar one. And then we'll check back in at the end. So tonight's featured artist is Elisabeth Pellathy. She works in a variety of mediums, responding to locations, history, and social context. She sees physical and digital manipulation of material as parallel processes. An open dialogue between these realms provides a generative space for her exploration of materiality and process. Tactile and digital act as metaphors for the complexity of the space in between, the slippage of the moment. Often ecological concerns, or more specifically, issues of disappearance, are themes in her work. Urgency in issues of language, fragility, loss, invisibility and visibility, tactility, and magnification emerge. While Pellathy's working methodology is at times divergent, it reflects contemporary art in global times, where accessibility of information leads to variant paths, weaving, intersecting, or perhaps never meeting, yet offering a chance of discovery. Pellathy trained at Alfred University School of Art and Design, New York State College of Ceramics, Alfred, New York, receiving a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in 2005 and an MFA in Electronic Integrated Arts in 2011. She's taught new media at UAB since 2014 and very recently received tenure. Her work has been exhibited at Palazzo Albrizzi Capeo, Venice, Italy, Booth Museum, Royal Pavilion, and museums in the United Kingdom, Montgomery Museum of Fine Art in the United States, Alfred Ceramics Art Museum, Peel Center for Baltimore History and Architecture, Currents New Media, Unicorn Center for Art in China, and the Urban Institute for Contemporary Art, as well as at AEIVA. So welcome, Elisabeth. I'm so excited that you are here. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen first.
I just want to say thank you so much to AEIVA and for all of the tech support and all of the support that goes into an event like this. There's a lot of behind the scenes, so thank you for the guidance and the help and the support. So thanks, AEIVA. You're a great partnership with the Department of Art and Art History, and we're just really happy to have this kind of arts corridor here in Birmingham. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm really excited I know we've talked about this a lot, so I'm really excited to dig into it. So I'm going to start flipping through the PowerPoint, and why don't you tell us what drew you to art? Who have you been inspired by?
Yeah, so I think my journey with art started very early. My parents are big readers, and there was lots of books in our house at all times. And my mom had a huge library and a huge tomb of art books. So I remember in elementary school, flipping through all of these books all the time, about variety of subject of art. And there was one book in particular, it had a red velvet cover. It was called, I believe, The History of Spain in Art. And it kind of talked about art from South America and how it influenced Spain. So there was a lot of indigenous art, like Inca, Mayan, Peruvian. There was art of ceremonial rituals from Mexico, as well as some more internationally well-known artists. And I was really kind of taken by the images there. And then also, I'm Hungarian, and we had a lot of kézimunka in our house, which is needlepoint. And needlepoint is kind of this embroidery that depicts flowers, wheat, paprika, forget-me-nots, all of the traditional flowers of Hungary would be displayed as doilies or as pillows or as tablecloths throughout my house. So I think I just kind of got invested in that at an early age and going to museums with my mom. And then taking a lot of classes when I was in high school. And then, of course, being very much an advocate to go to school for the arts, the fine arts, instead of a more liberal arts education. I really wanted to go into the fine arts.
I'm already seeing some of this, knowing your art and kind of how it plays into it. So before we get into that, new media, that is a very broad term. Tell us why new media and kind of what it is.
Yeah, so I really fell in love with new media in 2008. I'm a traditional printmaker, so that's what I did in my undergraduate, and you can see an image there. I'm still incorporating printmaking in my work very heavily. So what happened was, I love new media because it's this kind of, it doesn't have the space of painting or sculpture that has the chance to have like a really deep historical lens, but it's kind of like become this catch-all for contemporary art today. And I really love that because it relies on traditional methods, but it's very, very contemporary. It's very present. So, to be a good video artist, you need to know photography. And to be an excellent animator, drawing. And to be able to understand installation, you need to understand three-dimensional space. So I just love the way that new media captures everything, but then changes it and becomes emergent and something completely new and of the moment. So I really kind of am drawn to that because within my own working process, I don't necessarily just use one type of material or even classify myself as one type of artist. So new media really is expansive, and I love that about it. And I think new media art is kind of defined as art that is using technology, has emergent technology as its focal point, often is durational, so, VR, sound, video, glitch art, but also there's printmaking in there too, as long as it's using technology that's on current trend.
Okay, and so what kind of technologies? Is there a technology that you favor the most recently, or are there multiple ones?
Yeah, that's a great question because I definitely I'm very project based. So I work in the material that I think fits the concept the best. So what you're seeing here in this slideshow is a mixture of um, digital 3D scanning with laser etching plates and then turning those into prints. So I'm using a series of different technologies to create a final output. But I also work in video and sound and a lot of other materials. I'm really interested in taking something that's not supposed to be its traditional use and then going ahead and making that something new. So I, draw with a CNC machine, which is not really what it's supposed to do. I take a 3D scan and turn it back into a two-dimensional object. I, use sound as ecology. I really like to play on the boundaries, and I don't like borders.
Awesome. So I'm going to pause real quick because we have a video of some of this that, give me 1 second. Whoops.
Yeah, and the work that I'm showing here tonight is basically the culmination of two investigations, but using the same process, which is what we're going to see in the video, which is 3D scanning objects and then taking those 3D scans and slicing them in a software. And those slices then become two-dimensional, so I can print them on a piece of plexiglass to laser etch, and then take that laser etch and print it traditionally as a print. So this
And
is,
okay.
oh, I was just going to say this is a mollusk from the Cahaba River, and out. This was found in Bibb County.
And do you want to go ahead and start telling us about this particular project?
Yeah, so I've been a part of a collective with two other artists, so there's three of us in total, called the Cahaba River Watershed Project for about 5.5 years. And the three of us approach the Cahaba River in various ways. And the way that I decided to approach this project was to really think about the minutia of the river, the spaces that without them, the ecology wouldn't be healthy, but people often neglect them or don't know that much about them. So the snails, the mollusks, the types of seashells that you find, rocks that kind of just crash upon the shore but are often neglected. So those species are really our indicator species of whether or not a environment is healthy. So I started to collect those and I started to scan those. And while traditionally scanning or 3D scanning, which is what you're seeing in the video, would result in a three-dimensional object, um, I decided that that's really not revealing what I want it to reveal. That's kind of taking something natural and then producing a generic replica. And instead, I wanted to take those and make them two-dimensional prints. And also, they're very small. The shells themselves are quite tiny. So I was able to then expand them into whatever size I want, and have this miniature expand into something much more grandiose. And that's kind of the point of the project, right? To take this river that everyone takes for granted and make it grandiose. It's one of the longest free-ranging rivers, right, of our current location. Um, and it's around 200 miles in length. And it's a tiny artifact in comparison to all the water that we have in Alabama that drains into the Mobile Bay. And it's really important because of its ecology and its ecosystem.
And so I want to come back to your work series, but we've moved on to a second video. And can you explain kind of all your technology and stuff that's going on here?
Yeah, so that's a desktop 3D scanner, and it's just a video from those first video that you saw was a close-up of what you're seeing here. And then I have some of the things that I collected from the river outlaid in the front so that you can see what comes out of the river. And also the scale and the size of that, so that you can see that they are quite small, these mollusks and shells.
And then this is the one that fascinated me the most. So walk us through what's going on here.
Okay,
Because
so
this is a lot of fun.
So after I scan those artifacts, I bring them into a software called Rhino. And in Rhino, I'm able to slice them and I'm able to play with the mesh density of each scan, which is how you guys got your coloring sheets tonight, right? So I'm scanning these artifacts and then playing with them in a software, and you can see whenever I zoom in a little bit, you can see that mesh density is very, very tightly woven. And I start to play and I start to slice and I start to manipulate. And as I start to manipulate, then I can kind of control the image and what is going to be the best representation of that specific object. In this case, the cylindrical liloplex.
And so why are you slicing it multiple times?
So I slice it multiple times because it comes in as a 3D object, and Rhino is a 3D software, so I can see the 3D object. But to be able to have it translate on a two-dimensional surface, I need to get rid of some of that mesh. That mesh density that you see would basically blow out a print. It wouldn't be able to hold any of the ink. So I need to keep slicing so that it can become two-dimensional. And I also like to see what's going to be the most kind of beautiful. I know that that's not a word that's often used in art, but I really think that beauty and art are a necessity. It makes it a more beautiful rendering.
And so as you're doing this, you're fixing the lines here. So these are the lines that you're wanting to keep, or
Yeah. And that information there that looks like the inside of the shell is actually the rotations. It is all external. It's not internal. It looks internal, but it's actually external. And it's just, you're seeing everything. You're seeing every side of that 6-point scan in the mesh.
Oh, Elizabeth, Sonia has a question. She asks, why are parts yellow and parts black?
Oh, the parts that are yellow are the parts that I'm highlighting in the video. And the parts that are black are the mesh that I'm not highlighting at the moment. So you can see how I'm trying to collect this one side and then move it over. And then that material there in the center, I can either use to make a CNC drawing or just delete.
so so the one that you just left, you duplicated, but every time you slice it, you're getting less lines. And
Yeah,
that's what you're going for, right?
so first you saw me slicing, and now you're seeing me play with the mesh density. So right now in the video, I'm playing with the mesh density. I'm saying, okay, what kind of mesh articulation do I want? Do I want it 20, 10, 30? And you can see that the lines get essentially, maybe the best word to say is like looser or less dense, the more I play with the density of it, right? So as I play with the density, you can see in these 3 variations, they start off, less dense, and then that's a medium, and then that's a very fine. Those are the parts that I'm neglecting, I don't want, and then again, you're seeing the other side of that.
And so just kind of pull this back full circle to my first question about your influences. Is this what led to your trying to pull up the PowerPoint again, led to the image that is the Coloring Night picture, correct, for the embroidery?
Yeah, so, basically I 3D scan the seashells, I bring them into the software, I slice them, I articulate the mesh density the way that I want, and then I actually laser etch them on a plexiglass plate and then print them traditionally as prints. And then for the image that you have for the Coloring Night, those are digital embroideries. So they use a similar process, but they're a bit different. And here what you're seeing on the screen is actually the 3D shells printed, right? And I'm kind of playing with that a bit because it's like a taxonomy of uselessness. It's like, we have these objects that are real and they're beautiful. And here is a 3D printed thing that obviously is never going to achieve the beauty of the original. But it's fun to kind of see that as a realization that the generic is never as beautiful as the real.
And so this one, the left one is the real, and then this one's the 3D print.
Yeah.
So very obviously,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
one's
and that
which.
one's scaled up. Yeah, yeah. And that's the shell from tonight that's 3D printed. So, yeah.
When you present these works, do you often do a print and then something that's more 3-dimensional, kind of like the embroidery, and then also the 3D print, or do you only show one or the other? Do you always go through a process of like all the things?
That's a great question. I usually just show the finished work. So the prints would be the finished work, or the embroideries would be the finished work. So yeah.
Okay, so not all of them, but but in the process of it, in deciding which one, do you tend to try out different ones, or do you go for a specific? I know I want this one to be a digital embroidery.
Yeah, no, I just go through the entire process. Typically, I did work on the series that we're going to see, the Gulf of Mexico series, and that one was very much intentionally for an idea about the sea and about these things that I found on the Gulf of Mexico. So, and those were going to definitely become digital embroideries. Yeah.
So I also know that you are a little bit, you don't just stick with one series. I know we've been seeing a lot of seashells and such, but you seem to be a little bit more project based. So, and you've exhibited at AEIVA more than just the two official exhibitions. You've done more projects. So one of these was with the Jessica Angel. And so for those of you that didn't get to see the Jessica Angel installation at AEIVA, this is our lobby. So Jessica Angel is a Colombian-born artist and created this. This is entirely made out of vinyl. So it's vinyl stickers. It was very satisfying, not satisfying to take it down afterwards, but very satisfying to put it up. And it was three-dimensional. So facing the hyperstructure really meant to show the transmission of knowledge throughout the building in a three-dimensional format, which was really cool. And it was installed with UAB students and volunteers and a staff that were kind of strong-armed, but also willingly went in. I loved working on it. But so you were asked to collaborate on this.
Yeah, Jessica had asked me to collaborate on this project when I um, heard her lecture at AVA, and we got to talking, and it kind of was a natural flow. I think we were interested in very similar ideas, this kind of expansive space that also deals with the miniature. So that became a really great conversation, and then we did a one night, my students and I did a one night projection in the space. So this is my video here with the circles that are responding to Jessica Angel's work, with the squares, with the similar color. And I have this one yellow dot that orbits these planets for the duration of the entire night.
And so yours is up here, and then the student work is down here?
Yeah, and then my students, this was great. I solicited all of my classes, and I asked them, hey, we have this opportunity to work. Not going to make it a class project. I feel like that's not going to be as successful or what I want. Why don't we just kind of do an ad hoc animation group, and we just meet outside of class? And so I had this group of 6 students, and we just met, and we would put on music and we would make animations together, and it was really fun and really great. And it allowed all of my levels from my foundations courses to my 300 levels to participate, just if they wanted to. So it was great because it's like this nice group of students that we're all kind of getting together just for the sole purpose of making work. And they were called Absorption Line, and we had a lovely time doing that.
And then this is also the group that there was also a kind of one night projection on Ava's windows, correct?
No, this is a different group. So in 2014, when I first arrived, I just kept on seeing AEIVA as like this moving window box. It's got all that glass, and it's such a beautiful space. And in the evening, I just wanted to see that space completely light up. So that was a class project. It was my first year here, and I had asked all of my students again. I was teaching a 200 and a 300 level, and I said, let's get together and let's do a video or animation. It can be your choice. and let's project it onto AEIVA. And people were really into it. It was really fun, and it was a great night.
So teaching seems to play, well, obviously you are a professor, so it's obviously a big part of your life, but like what drew you into teaching, and kind of what sustains you in as
Yeah.
faculty?
So, I mean, I think teaching as part of my DNA. My father is a political science professor. He does environmental law, and my mom is a Latin teacher. So, you know, my entire life was filled with books and newspapers piled high, and there's always reading and really intense conversations about a range of topics in my house, and it was always just open and free to discuss anything. And I love that growing up, and I think, you know, I really kind of absorbed that. That really seeped into my life. And when I was in high school, we had to do a senior project, and I decided to work with elementary students and do an art camp over the weekends. And then I lived in Beijing, China for several years, and I wrote curriculum for a school, and then I was an adjunct, and then I got this appointment here. And, you know, I just feel like there's just so much discovery and experimentation that can happen in a classroom and at a university that doesn't necessarily mimic non-academic life. I just feel like there's just a space where you can just say like, oh, let's do this, or let's research this for a really long time. And people not only are excited about that, but really want that. And I really appreciate that. And I really kind of bring that sense of experimentation and liveliness and discussion to my classroom.
Do you think that's why you're very project based?
Yeah, I think I'm project based because I guess I see the project as being the best material possible, right? Like whatever the best material is, I'll use it. So like I was saying, like, you know, I don't like borders. That's a political statement as well.
Fair.
Yeah. I use the CNC machine to draw, the 3D scanner to produce 2D prints, the laser etcher to print on 3D objects like feathers and seashells. I create, you know, audio that's not supposed to be for audio. You know, I just kind of love this sense that there's a space out there that's liminal, and it's always moving, and all of a sudden it can slip, and it can slip, and it can slip. And if you want to live in that slip, first you have to become very technically excellent, but then you have to also understand that there's a space of unknown that comes from constantly seeking. And I love that space, you know, always reading, always wanting to know, always being there, and then also kind of diving deep with a technical space. So I think right in between that is where I am always trying to achieve in my work. That's where I always want to be.
That's awesome. So let's tell us how that kind of translates then into one of your more recent projects.
Yeah, so in 2017, I got a grant here, a Dean's Humanities grant from CAS, and it was to translate my prints into digital embroideries. And it took a long time. I didn't finish this project until 2019. So, you know, if you want to live in this kind of buzzing space, sometimes it works, and sometimes it's slower than you want it to be. But I had never translated these works into digital embroideries because it's such a different process. With printmaking, you can overlap lines infinitely, and you can have these overlap lines and they can work really beautifully. But with digital embroidery, every single one of those fill spaces and every single one of those lines have to be either connected horizontally or vertically, or their own fill. And that took me a very long time to figure out how to take that mesh density that you saw in the previous video and make it so that I could trace those lines for embroidery. That took quite a bit of time just to figure that out. So then once I figured that out, I was able to translate them into digital embroideries, and this is the series that you have here.
So what makes a digital embroidery? I mean, are you hand embroidering it or?
Yeah, so I'm working with an artist in Bristol, UK, Jackie Posey, and she's actually working on a 20 by 20 embroidery hoop. And I'm sending her the drawings, and she's doing the digital embroidery. And she works on a 20 by 20 space to make these.
What are they? What are they on?
They're on 100% wool, and they are a synthetic thread. You can't use cotton; it's too it breaks too easily. So a polyester thread, because of its elasticity, is used, and then in a variety of colors. And
So
that's coloring sheet. And you can see there the line density between the two, because embroidery has a line density because of the thread, that a print, which is laser etched, can be so minutely thin, and the embroidery can't be. So I kind of gave you both of those so that you can see both of the processes through the print and the embroidery.
Oh, Elizabeth, Sonia wanted to know, does she use a machine to do the digital embroidery?
Yep. So it's all done through a machine. Yep.
so she just puts an algorithm in and the pattern and such. So it's like a standard kind of.
Yeah, it's got the threads, and it has its own software. So you have to send the proper file, and then that gets turned into a file that the software can read, and then it gets embroidered by the machine on a flat surface. But she has really large machines. They're 20 by 20. So these are 20 by 20 embroideries, which is quite large in the embroidery world. If you've ever done machine things, they're usually 5 by 5.
Okay, so yeah, that's massive. It's massively different. Why was there not anyone in the United States? Why particularly this person in Bristol?
That's also a great question. To be honest, no. I had a very difficult time finding anyone to do this project, and got shut down about 10 times before I found someone that would work with me on such a weird and customized project. And I just kind of found someone who really appreciates doing these things, that isn't commercial, and was able to kind of translate the embroideries. But no, I was not able to find someone in the United States. But the UK has like a really rich and deep history of textiles. So I
Hey,
think.
Chris. Oh, sorry. Keep going, Elizabeth.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that really accounts for finding people who can do more unique things. Yeah.
Christina, we have a couple questions in the chat, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so first one from Stacy. Are the digital embroideries usually framed and mounted two-dimensionally, or do you have a specific way that you display them?
Right, yeah. I actually am going to do them as flags. I have not yet framed this work. I was just getting started in late April with the framing, and I had bought some other colors of felt, and I was going to kind of hang them as flags, and I got really slowed down in my process. But I don't think these would be framed. I don't really see that as being the best option.
Then the next question, I think, is in regards to a slide that was a couple slides ago, and it had, keep going back, Christina, this one, and Sonia wanted to know, is that a watermark?
No, that's actually intentional. So that is a detail of on the right-hand side of the seashell, there is a kind of circular mark that I made coming from the top of that shell that I wanted to have articulated, and I wanted it to match the same coloration of the wool. I wanted it to be really subtle.
That's it from the chat for now.
Okay. Guys, y'all can keep putting questions in. We still have plenty of time. But this is amazing. And then is this what you were thinking about for the flag?
Yeah. Yep. So I kind of put in a digital image there because the felt company that I used also, it's from England. They sell a myriad of really, really rich and beautiful felts in a variety of colors and weights, and it's all 100% wool. So I'm thinking of doing these panels that I laser etch and then add to the original embroidery.
Awesome. Well, since you got slowed down, I'm assuming because you had to start homeschooling.
Yeah, I have 3 children.
So I understand that. Let's move on then to kind of where you're at today and what you are and are not able to work on. So tell us what you've been doing in your very little spare time.
Yeah, so we went into, I guess, the closures of everything in March, and my kids came home from school. So I've got a 5, 7, and 9-year-old, and they sent everyone home, and we just went right into action. I started doing daily watercolors with them. We started learning geography, not a subject that's often taught in schools, in a kind of, so I just said, like, okay, well, the things that they don't teach in school, we know the arithmetic, and we love to read. So what are things that we can do at home? We can take nature walks. We can do bark rubbings. We can learn about insects. My 9-year-old wants to be an entomologist. And we can get out there and we can start to explore our world. So I've been watercolor painting with them every single day. So I have 4 watercolors from, March 16th to today, of every single day, where we collect specimens and then we bring them to our table and then we paint them.
Amazing.
So we just, and you think that the kids would be like bored by it. They love it, and I'm not just saying that generically. It's like our time to be together. We put on music, we just hang out. It's really fun. And then, sometimes I'm available throughout the day and sometimes I'm not. And I feel like that's our time to be together.
And so we are at AEIVA and Art Play going to do a virtual classroom engagement workshop for K through 12 teachers everywhere. So if anyone knows a teacher, August 11th and August 17th, small plug, make sure you sign up. They're free. But that's a really cool idea that I'm sure while you're doing this, questions are coming up about the objects that they are. So the watercolor, kind of like how we all are coloring and having something to do with our hands while we're listening to a lecture, we're probably remembering this. It's not a lecture, Q&A. We're remembering things that you're saying probably more than we would if we were just sitting in the lecture hall.
Yeah, I think it's funny, we do a lot of reading in our house, and that was another thing that happened in lockdown. I, like everyone else, jumped onto thriftbooks.com and bought every great literature that I possibly could find. And then also downloaded all the audios so that they can pile into a room and take their stuffed animals with them and listen to an audio tape so I can cook dinner or lunch or breakfast, depending. And and I feel like they do really absorb a lot. And also I bought some nature volumes about Alabama so that we can really investigate what the plants are, and so that it can be a more immersive learning experience too. So, they can really have a sense of place and location.
That's amazing. I might steal that example and pull it into the virtual classroom engagement, because it's a really good idea that the students might learn by doing something else while they're listening. So sorry guys, I digressed us for a second. That's the kind of thing I nerd out about, is education. But so at home, beyond the watercolors, we've gone through 3 images, and I'll go back and kind of start them again. So what medium are these? What's inspiring you here?
So that's a digital collage. I'm just kind of playing around in the studio. I don't get the dedicated time that I typically would have. Like I don't get these 6-hour chunks of a day. So I've just been kind of like doing the watercolor and then trying to read a lot about art, reading Olbrist, the Do It Compendium, reading through that, like how to make a spoon and a fork, an installation, really like getting in there as well, but they're very short passages. And then also just doing these collages with works that are either older works or things that I'm working on, just to kind of keep that muscle memory fluid and alive. So this is just a collage. What you're seeing, the pink, is a sound wave of a project that I did I guess a few years ago, but one of the prints, this was one of my drawings on a CNC machine, but the CNC machine, whenever I did it, I didn't run the print properly. I missed a part, so it was a mistake, but it was quite pretty. So I just kept it. And then it's a honeycomb that failed to 3D print. They're too translucent. They can't 3D print, but that mistake got turned into this like expanded thing. And then that seashell that you're using as a coloring page as a 3D render. Before it gets 3D printed, it kind of, I have the ability in the software to change the colors. So I made it Zolmai inspired because I'm Hungarian. So kind of played with that, space.
That's awesome. And then this one here.
Yeah, so that's going to become another digital embroidery. But I show this because all of those overlapping lines is the problem with digital embroidery, because you can't digital embroider this. I'm going to have to take it back into the software, and all of that line density, I'm going to have to simplify it so that it can actually embroider properly. But this is what the final outcome, that's the vision before it becomes the reality. So it goes through all of these iterations of like, what do I want this thing to look like? What colors do I want? What's my stitch? What's my stitch, thickness? Is it fill? Is it a line? What threads am I going to use? And that's where I start until I break it down to be a true embroidery.
Have you ever sent one off and you and the person both thought, okay, it's a good file, it's going to print, and then it turned out it wouldn't?
I've sent one off that I thought was going to be a good print, and it got rejected and sent back to me. I was like, what? This is going to be great. Like, no, it's not. But no, Jackie is like, she's a professional embroiderer. She's been doing this for years, and she had to have some stern conversations with me. No, Elisabeth, no. We can't do that because I already told you that. So, like anyone else, I have these wild expectations that have to, of course, be brought down to reality.
But you're the artist. It's your job to kind of push the envelope there and just, well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. And then I'm told quite clearly, no. And then I go back to the drawing board and make it reality.
Hey, at least you tried.
Yeah.
And then this one. Is this the same kind of rendering that we saw earlier that was an embroidery?
Yeah, so this is a rendering for a laser etch plate, and I've actually made a series of if you cast your memory back to the beginning of the lecture and you saw me with those really large plates. Those plates are very unruly and difficult to work with, and I'm doing that process from beginning to end independently, right? Like I'm doing all of the scanning, all of the manipulation, all of the printing, and all of the framing. So I'm starting to do a series from the Cahaba that are a bit smaller, 20 by 30. So I've started making these plates in plexi that are a bit smaller, and this is one of those plates, and I think they'll be a bit more precious and have kind of like a little bit more of like you'll have to get in close. It won't really magnify. It will be something that you bring in close. So this is a fox skull that I found at Bibb County that I 3D scanned and then articulated into a laser etched plate.
Is it similar to, I remember your first time exhibiting at AEIVA, you had a feather that had a very delicate word etched into it. Is that the same process, or is that a different process?
It is the same process as laser etching, but just for a different purpose. These are half-inch plexiglass plates that are flat, and the feather, of course, has a kind of slope to it. So that took another skill set of figuring out where the focal point is, because a laser etcher really works like a camera. So if you're not in focus, your words or whatever you're trying to etch will be blurry. So that really took another kind of space of figuring out how to laser etch these words that were coming from the wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Conservancy, of bird deaths, of reasons why birds perish. And surprise, surprise, they're 90% human based. That's 90% of the reasons why animals have difficulties is because of our species. Yeah, but I'm really into the Harrisons and Mark Dion and this idea of getting out into the field. And I'm really drawn to Agnes Deans, of course, who is the first woman to be really recognized as a pioneer in ecological art. I'm really keen on the EAT, electronic art and technology journals, Robert Rauschenberg and David Tudor, and they were talking about these kind of ecological concerns long before, it became a genre in art. And they were really discussing that as something that needs to be preserved and put on the kind of radar of one of the things that we can talk about as artists. And I've really, to the best of my ability, tried to pick up that torch.
I really look forward to seeing this one in that delicate form. So tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this goes back to laser etching. So this is a really poor quality screen grab because I'm looking into the interior of a laser etcher, which has a thick glass, window. And here I'm doing a project where I'm taking like shapes in a rhinoceros, like the sphere or the rhombus or the torus, and I'm starting to actually laser etch them onto seashells. And that's, again, kind of this idea of, there have been carving into shells for as long as we've been alive. Even before our species, people have carved into seashells. It's just this incredible connection to humanity and to being a person, and then also just translating that into a kind of emergent technology, or using the technologies that we have today to kind of talk about those issues. So that's the kind of globe symbol. Everyone knows it. It's almost like an emoji at this point. It's like so overused. So I'm kind of putting these symbols that are maybe overused on this natural material.
Hey, Christina, we are almost out of time. I just wanted to give you that heads up.
Okay, yes, thank you. Before we talk about this one, I want to ask, does anyone want to unmute and ask a question? So I told y'all you get that option. It's okay. So Elisabeth, tell us about this last one.
Oh yeah, these are just my watercolors with my kids. And this is what I do every day. I mean, it is an A4 printer paper. I am not using nice materials. That is intentional. It is just about, getting in there and having fun and being in the moment with my kids. So that's what 2020 looks like for me.
But what an amazing record for you to keep, and then your kids to keep and kind of hand down. As I feel like art has been a thing in 2020 that kind of has propelled us through this pandemic. And so to find an outlet, I mean, I know a lot of people have taken back up journaling or diaries and things to record thoughts, but what an amazing thing to have where it's not written, but it's an expression and what you were focusing in on that day. I think this is amazing. Are you going to turn it into like a little book or a binder of things?
Yeah, I'll probably do that just for us, you know, just for us to have. But mainly it's just, like I mentioned earlier, it's just a way for us to connect every day. And, you know, I've become their kind of everything, and that's never, it's never pretty. So at least this allows some beauty to happen before the please don't do that. Time for dinner.
Stop hitting your sister.
On your mask. You know, I mean, and they're great. They listen really well, and they're really doing, you know, what they need to do, and they also really get it. They're really cognizant of it. I mean, my 5-year-old, we were on a walk on some of the trails, and she said, "Oh, someone's not wearing their mask. Should I tell them?" No, it's okay. We don't have to be, but like, you know, it allows us to get out of that space. You know, it's kind of like swimming. It's like you do the daily watercolor and you go swimming or something. You know, or exercise. You know, it allows you to get out of the space of thinking about where we are currently. And kids pick up on stuff. They're very emotive. They're very intelligent. You know, so it's just a way to kind of be free.
That's awesome. So I am going to stop the screen share, and if you guys would mind, turn back on your cameras and let's see what everyone worked on and how far you got. And go ahead and hold it up, and we will do a screenshot of it. Awesome. Fantastic, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Elisabeth, so much for being here tonight. I really enjoyed it. I've always been fascinated by your work and your process. So thank you for indulging me with all the process questions. I know I was very upfront with you, like we're talking about your process. But thank you so much for being here. And everyone, if you are wanting to share it on social media, our Instagram handle, as I look at Tina's square, is
AEIVA at AEIVA UAB.
And so AEIVA is AEIVA UAB. So be sure to tag us on there and we will share it. And thank you, Elisabeth, so much. And congratulations again on tenure. I'm really excited about that. And next week, not next week, 2 weeks from now, August 20th, Stacy Holloway, who is on the call as well, wave your hand. She will be our next coloring night artist. And then Patty B, who is also here, will be with us in October, I believe, because she is one of the artists in our upcoming exhibition, a la carte. So, guys, we're really excited to have you all here, and we hope you come back for future coloring nights. So, thank you, guys.